The Giant's Causeway on the coast of Northern Ireland is one of the UK's outstanding natural features. Its steep cliffs and deep bays form a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
When archaeologists opened a colossal stone door in Ireland that had remained sealed for 3,000 years, what they found inside challenged everything scholars thought they knew. Hidden behind a movable megalithic hinge was an underground water chamber carved with astonishing precision. Its stonework fitted so tightly that it held back immense hydrostatic pressure for millennia without a single leak. What made the discovery even more baffling was this. The people believed to have built these structures were long considered simple farmers using crude tools. So how could they have created works of engineering and water management so far ahead of their time? Let us take a closer look. The shell of time. Baltinglass has long been placed neatly within the familiar picture of late Bronze Age Europe, roughly between 1200 and 800 BC. The people living on this island were thought to be small, scattered communities, building shelters of wood and earth, tending animals, practicing simple farming, and surviving through self-sufficiency. Their society was seen as primitive, loosely organized, and lacking both advanced building methods and any real capacity for large-scale planning. The great earthen rings on the hills of Baltinglass, especially at the site known as Brussels Town Ring, were also given a straightforward explanation. They were seen as little more than crude fortifications, raised embankments and shallow ditches encircling the hilltop, used as temporary refuges in times of conflict. According to the most common theory, whenever groups in the valley clashed, they would drive their cattle uphill and shelter behind those earthworks until the danger had passed. At first, everything seemed to make sense. There was no surface water on the summit. The soil was dry and poor, unsuitable for cultivation. Cold winds coming in from the sea swept directly across the slopes, making it hard to imagine this as a place for permanent settlement. And the objects uncovered on the surface appeared to tell the same story. A few broken potsherds, several polished stone tools, and traces of decayed animal bones. Together, they reinforced a familiar conclusion. 3,000 years ago, the northwestern edge of Europe had not yet reached any form of complex civilization. Within that logic, monumental structures, refined material technology, and durable infrastructure could only belong to the great centers of the Mediterranean and the Near East. Baltinglass, by contrast, seemed to be nothing more than a small site whose story had already been told. Researchers surveyed the earthen banks, measured the visible remains, recorded everything with care, and placed the site among those questions that had already been answered. That confidence endured for a very long time. No one imagined that beneath the green grass and weathered stone, there might still be something of real significance. No one believed those silent hills were guarding a secret powerful enough to unsettle an entire system of understanding about the past. And then, just as every conclusion seemed final, modern science began to look beneath the ground, into places that shovels, picks, and traditional excavation had never truly reached. From that moment on, the calm surrounding Baltinglass came to an end. The ghost beneath the earth. At Brussels Town Ring, ground-penetrating radar, combined with airborne LiDAR scanning, stripped away the veil of vegetation and shallow soil for the first time, revealing a system of traces unlike anything earlier theories had imagined. LiDAR works by sending millions of laser pulses toward the surface, then measuring the return time of each reflection to build an extraordinarily precise three-dimensional map of the landscape. This technology allowed researchers to see the true contours and hidden structures beneath the natural cover. Beneath a shallow layer of soil, barely a meter deep, lay a dense network of geometric patterns. These were not just a few scattered house foundations, but more than 600 distinct circular dwellings, packed closely together and almost filling the entire space inside the earthwork ring. That discovery shook the old understanding of Baltinglass to its core. A complex on that scale could not have been a temporary refuge. It looked instead like a large settlement, perhaps even a proto-urban center. With a population that may have reached into the thousands, a community of that size should, by all logic, have formed near rivers, farmland, and a stable water supply. Yet Brussels' town ring stood on a dry, wind-swept hilltop, with no surface water and few conditions favorable to long-term habitation. If this place truly sustained thousands of people, then its inhabitants must have possessed an extraordinary solution for securing essential resources. Above all, water. That question became even more urgent when data from the ground-penetrating radar began to reveal deeper anomalies beneath the settlement. GPR works by sending electromagnetic pulses into the ground. When the waves encounter materials of different densities, they reflect back and make it possible to map what lies buried below. In the central area of the settlement, the reflected signals were relatively uniform, consistent with the remains of wooden posts, compacted earth floors, and organic structures that had decayed over time. But at the edge of the settlement, slightly apart from the rest, the radar recorded something entirely different. The returning data revealed the presence of an enclosed structure with a clear geometric form and an unusually high material density. More importantly, the material appeared far heavier and denser than the natural shale layers that make up the Wicklow Hills. That all but ruled out the possibility of a random geological disturbance. Breaking through the seal. The physical excavation aimed directly at the anomalous signal on the edge of Brussels' town ring proceeded with extreme caution, because with every layer of soil removed, new physical details emerged that resisted being contained within the familiar timeline of Bronze Age Europe. As archaeologists cleared away the upper layers and descended into the area identified by the radar, they did not find rough, irregular stones gathered from the surrounding landscape and piled together in the patchwork style typical of early Irish tombs or primitive fortifications. Instead, what came into the sunlight after thousands of years were enormous megalithic blocks. Their surfaces bore unmistakable evidence of deliberate mechanical intervention. They had been cut, shaped along the edges, and worked to create flat contact faces rather than being left in their natural rough form. The sheer weight of each block established a harsh physical limit, proving that they could not have been transported and arranged by improvised groups of laborers working with bare hands alone. The deeper the excavation continued along the outer face of the structure, the clearer it became that this megalithic mass was part of an intentionally designed underground complex. The stones had not been heaped together to form a burial mound. They had been positioned along vertical axes, creating a narrow passage that led straight into a hollow space within the hill itself. That passage ended at a final physical barrier, a colossal stone door that sealed the entire cross-section of the tunnel. In prehistoric archaeology, finding a stone slab blocking the entrance to an underground structure is not unusual. Yet the slab at Brussels' town ring displayed mechanical characteristics unlike anything expected. This was not an undefined boulder rolled into place to close off a cave and then packed around with loose earth and rubble. Its edges had been shaped to follow the curve of the chamber vault, maintaining a minute and remarkably even gap around the entire line of contact. This careful proportional design turned the blocking slab into a true movable door. The lower edge of the door rested on a shaped stone ledge that functioned like a primitive hidden hinge, yet one of striking effectiveness, allowing this mass of many tons to be shifted, opened, and closed in a controlled way without collapsing the vaulted structure above it. The fact that this friction-fitted joint remained perfectly intact after 3,000 years underground placed immense pressure on the excavation process. The stone door was not merely an obstacle, it functioned as a physical sealing valve, separating the outside environment from a space that had been cut off from the atmosphere since long before the rise of Rome. The use of machinery or brute force to pry it open carried the risk of completely destroying the microclimate, the underground pressure conditions, and the finely balanced load-bearing mechanism that had kept the inner structure from collapsing under the weight of thousands of tons of earth and stone pressing down on it for 3 millennia. The hydraulic machine, when a system of hydraulic jacks and modern support frames finally managed, with extraordinary care, to shift the stone door from its original sealed position. Sliding it aside, the dark space revealed beyond instantly shattered every academic framework then being used to measure the capabilities of prehistoric people. Behind the seal, there was no dust-laden burial chamber, nor any crude storage pit for grain. The beam of a flashlight entered an empty chamber and caught the shimmer of moisture, an intact underground reservoir. Yet the true astonishment did not come from the presence of water itself, but from the cold, technical precision of the space that contained it. The entire interior showed none of the mud, cave-in debris, or natural erosion scars that would normally be unavoidable in an underground water-filled cavity. The floor of the reservoir had been lined with enormous stone slabs, worked to such an implausible degree of flatness that every uneven point capable of becoming a structural weakness under a full load of water had been eliminated. The existence of an intentionally leveled stone floor was only the beginning of the physical contradiction. The wall blocks forming the chamber had been fitted together with an almost unbelievable exactness. No mortar or binding substance of any kind was found in the joints. Instead, the stability of the structure depended entirely on a precise calculation of gravity and surface friction between the stones. This enclosed stone chamber had been designed to receive the natural flow from a projecting underground rock face just above the ceiling, where the hill's groundwater had been directed to run straight into the reservoir itself. Physical examination showed that the chamber operated under an exceptionally strict pressure regime. As groundwater rose and filled the basin, it generated immense hydrostatic force, pressing outward against the surrounding stone walls and directly against the inner face of the door. Any underground water storage system must confront a basic law of fluid dynamics. Water constantly seeks the easiest possible path of escape, widening even the smallest crack over time. Yet, the sealed environment at Brussels' town ring endured the combined burden of thousands of tons of earth and stone bearing down from above, together with relentless hydrostatic pressure from within. And still its structure had not shifted by so much as a millimeter. The stone joints showed no distortion and no erosion, keeping the entire body of water completely isolated without allowing a single drop to seep into the softer surrounding soil. To calculate the thickness of the walls, create a perfectly level stone floor, and carve joints that remained absolutely watertight in the darkness underground required a system of precise measurement and a command of hard stone, working that stands in direct opposition to the idea of rough experimental craftwork that the modern world has so often imposed on the people of late Bronze Age Europe. Power and rupture. The cold technical data radiating from this hydraulic machine, hidden beneath the stone, forced every academic analysis to return at once to the surface and reinterpret the entire nature of the city of 600 houses built above it. When a community's supply of water does not exist in the form of an open stream, a natural lake, or a village well where anyone can lower a bucket freely, then the social structure of the population depending on it must change at the deepest level. The design of this underground water chamber suggests no model of communal sharing. The fact that an essential resource for survival was locked behind a massive megalithic structure, protected by a stone door with its own physical opening and closing mechanism, is undeniable evidence of control. This was a quantified system of resource storage, built through immense collective effort, and its design assumes that the water behind that door belonged to a centralized authority able to decide when it would be opened, closed, and distributed. For this hydraulic system to move from concept into physical reality, The settlement at Brussels Town Ring cannot have been made up merely of self-sufficient farming households. As earlier theories assumed, to quarry massive blocks of stone, shape them into perfectly matched contact surfaces, transport them uphill, and assemble them into a chamber capable of resisting groundwater pressure required a highly complex class structure. Such a society must have possessed a specialized labor force, project overseers with the authority to command thousands of days of work, and above all, a cadre of ancient craftsmen or engineers who held deep knowledge of material mechanics, mathematical measurement, and the laws of hydrostatic pressure. The presence of advanced specialized labor, centralized control of resources, and sophisticated megalithic infrastructure are among the defining marks of an early state or an advanced urban civilization. Once the people living on the hills of Baltinglass are stripped of the label of primitive tribe and instead understood as part of a sharply stratified society with construction standards equal to, or in some respects, surpassing, those of certain contemporary centers in the Mediterranean. The timeline of intellectual development in Europe bends dramatically out of shape. If a technology of watertight fitted stone and large-scale urban planning appeared in Ireland around 1200 BC, then it stood at least half a millennium ahead of comparable models in Northern Europe. That chronological gap is not some minor discrepancy that can be hidden behind vague claims of accidental exchange. The existence of a coherent system of knowledge, complete with consistent standards of measurement and a smoothly functioning engineering mindset, on a remote island makes the total disappearance of this settlement, vanishing without leaving any clear line of transmission, into a historical anomaly that ordinary theoretical frameworks cannot easily explain. The void in memory. The anomaly of this site reached its most extreme point when stratigraphic analysis from a wide series of excavation trenches spread across the area of the 600 surrounding house foundations returned no evidence at all to explain its collapse. The upper soil layers contained no broad band of blackened charcoal, ruling out the possibility that the city had been consumed by natural fire. There were no distorted bronze spearheads embedded in fossilized timbers, no hurried mass graves, and no traces of structural destruction caused by military attack. Radiometric measurement and microscopic biological analysis also refused to yield any sign of an epidemic capable of wiping out thousands of lives. Everything the data revealed pointed to only one scenario, and it was also the hardest to explain. The thousands who once filled this city left it in an orderly and deliberate way, gathering their possessions, sealing shut the stone door of the hydraulic system, and then dispersing, while nature slowly reclaimed the site over the centuries. Yet, what caused the deepest unease among researchers was not the silent desolation of the hill itself, but the absolute silence of the thousands of years that followed. Ireland is a land famous for the strength of its oral tradition, where stories of warriors, ancient kings, and monumental sites such as Newgrange survived through song, poetry, and folklore across countless generations. And yet, there is not a single oral account, not a single line of local tradition or myth from Wicklow. That speaks of a great city once standing on the hill of Baltinglass. Nor is there any collective memory preserving the image of engineers who possessed the knowledge to control groundwater through stone, an entire treasury of knowledge in hydrology, mathematical measurement, and the mechanics of materials. The very knowledge that made possible the pressure system buried beneath the earth was never passed on to the Iron Age generations that followed. It was not copied. It was not refined. It left behind no draft, no echo, no continuation in neighboring regions. Instead, it was severed with startling finality at the very moment the city was abandoned, erased from the collective memory of the people of that region with what seems to be deliberate force. It is at this point of rupture that the limits of modern archaeology stand fully exposed. Mass spectrometers can use carbon to determine, with remarkable precision, the age of ash from an ancient hearth down to the span of a few decades. Yet even the most advanced analytical systems remain utterly powerless when asked to answer the most haunting question of all. Why a great body of knowledge, one that conferred both power and survival, was intentionally buried by the very people who possessed it, and surrendered to the darkness of permanent silence? The things that were never meant to be remembered. The inability of physical analysis to penetrate the complete silence of history brings us face to face with the true nature of what lies hidden behind the stone door at the Baltinglass Fort Complex. A buried system capable of operating steadily and containing hydrostatic pressure for 3,000 years without any sign of fracture cannot possibly be the product of fortunate trial and error, nor the hesitant experimentation of a crude farming society. The essential condition for cutting, positioning, and assembling a hydraulic structure so precise that it could withstand the distortions of time itself is the existence of a mature scientific mind. This is physical evidence that cannot be dismissed, proof that a full system of standardized measurement, structural mechanics, and planning mathematics once existed and was applied deliberately in a place and time where every historical textbook insists it should not have appeared. The brutal contradiction between the precision of the underground stone structure and the supposed simplicity assigned to Bronze Age Ireland means that this movable door did far more than merely seal off a source of groundwater. Through its weight and its exactness, the slab locked away a pocket of time in which human intellectual development had moved far beyond the familiar track of linear evolution. When such an immense body of knowledge in mathematics, engineering, and social organization is cut off so suddenly, leaving behind no line of transmission, no written record, and no surviving place in folklore, it suggests an invisible yet ruthless dispossession of knowledge from the shared current of humanity. Today, when we stand on the quiet green hills of Wicklow and look out over the shallow earthworks slowly yielding to weather and time, the true shock is not simply that our ancestors may once have possessed abilities far beyond what has been recorded. The deepest psychological weight comes from realizing that we are walking above the buried layers of a vast and sophisticated system of knowledge, one that some mechanism of time appears to have condemned to oblivion, never to be remembered. The truth about the technical mastery and the source of power behind this ancient city may never be fully reconstructed, because we are not merely trying to excavate a lost settlement. We are trying to reassemble a fragment of human understanding that history itself seems to have deliberately erased from its own memory.